back to the channel. My name is Jorvik, and this is a Fandom Friendly, the weekly show where we talk about all things fandom. It's been a while since I've done an episode, actually about 6 or 7 months, so I'm back. As you can see, if you are a previous viewer, setups changed a little bit. I want this to be more of a well-produced show, so going forward I'm going to be doing my best to make sure to keep up the aesthetics. Some house cleaning stuff to get out of the way. 2026, I really want to focus on these shows. It's going to be a big year. We have Avengers Doomsday coming out in December, which we'll talk about later in this episode. We have a new Spider-Man film coming out in the summer. We also have The Odyssey. We have Daredevil Season 2, Invincible Season 4, we have Supergirl. I mean, there is a lot coming out this year, so you bet that I'm going to be there to talk about it and cover it. But for right now, we're going to be focusing on some news that's come out like in the last month or so. So a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about is a little bit outdated, and the discourse on it has already run its course. But because I'm coming back to this a little bit later than I wanted to, I still kind of want to have like a starting ground so new viewers can come in and be like, oh, okay. So on the list today, we're going to be talking about the Star Wars news that came out in the last couple weeks, with Kathleen Kennedy stepping down and Dave Filoni and Lin Brennan taking over. We're also going to be talking about a few trailers that have come out in the last few weeks, and then to cap off this episode, we're going to be talking about Avengers Doomsday. I have a lot to talk about when it comes to those trailers that they released, or stories, whatever. The Russo brothers said those trailers were a lot of theories going around, a lot of ideas going around of what, these trailers can mean. Now there's talks of Secret Wars being split into 2 parts. So, but we are going to cover that later in the video. If you like this type of content, give it a thumbs up, give it a like. I do want to, embrace more of the community. I want to just be another voice and another perspective when it comes to these different projects. If you want to just listen to a certain topic, there will be timestamps in the description, so you can go down, check that out. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this first bit of news. So Kathleen Kennedy has finally stepped down from Lucasfilm. Now, this is something that I did cover in a previous episode last year. I think that news kind of broke. It was probably around like maybe April or May of last year, maybe around summertime. I don't remember exactly. Yeah, I talked about it then, and I think it's good. I think it's good. She's like in her 70s, I believe. Like, she's up there. So her just kind of focusing on other endeavors, I think is good. Now, the big question back then was who is going to replace Kathleen Kennedy. And of course, the leading theory was that it was going to be Dave Filoni, who has been involved in Lucasfilm for the better part of 15 years now. The other names that were tossed around was Jon Favreau, of course, because he's responsible for especially, The Mandalorian. Did get confirmation the last couple weeks that Dave Filoni is going to be the creative director of Lucasfilm, and he's going to have a co-president, a woman named Lin Brennan, who I am not familiar with. Clearly, she knows what she's doing. She has the job. But she's going to be running more of the business side of things at Lucasfilm. This is obviously a playbook recently done by Warner Bros. And DC Studios, with James Gunn being the creative director and Peter Safran being the business director. And look, I think it's a good move. Dave Filoni has his hands in basically everything that's going on in Star Wars right now. I mean, I still think we're getting Ahsoka Season 2. I'm one of the minority that actually really likes Ahsoka. We're getting the Mandalorian Grogu film coming out. I don't know if there's any other series in the works. Recently, when we're about to talk about it, we have the Darth Maul animated series coming out soon. But what I really wanted to talk about was a rumor. Okay, this is not like confirmed. It was something that was reported on last week, and I've seen some discourse on it, but there are things that I haven't really seen talk about it, and I just want to, give my 2 cents, I guess. In an interview with The Wrap last week, they were talking about potentially having some R-rated projects in Star Wars. Now, me personally, I would love that. Not just because of Star Wars can be gory or whatever. It's just that there is room in Star Wars to have more mature stories. It's the same thing that was going on with the MCU, and now that we've broken that barrier with Deadpool and Wolverine and Daredevil, crossing into that kind of world, and Disney is being more open to having R-rated projects, I think it could be a good move, and there's definitely an audience for it. When they were talking about the R-rated projects, the Andor was brought up, and Andor, to me, I mean, obviously this is not a controversial take, but I do think Andor and by proxy Rogue One are the best Star Wars media that we have, at least live action. I think there's a lot of good Clone Wars stuff, and I do really like a lot of the stuff that the Bad Batch was doing. But as far as live action goes, I do think Andor and Rogue One is just peak Star Wars. That's just my personal opinion. But it was reported that someone inside Lucasfilm said that Dave Filoni disliked Andor, and I could probably see it. Now again, this is not confirmed. Okay, this is something that was just mentioned. I do think that Tony Gilroy, Dave Filoni are obviously good friends. They've worked together more or less, and they have praised each other. But when you look at specifically Star Wars projects in the last few years, I really liked Skeleton Crew. I thought it was a fun, just nice, young kid coming of age Star Wars story, which I personally think we need more of, especially if you want to get that younger audience in. And I did a previous episode on it. I also really liked The Acolyte and Ahsoka, and the reason why I really liked those shows is because I'm a lore guy. Okay, I love reading comics. I love reading the books. When it comes to these different universes and having a story that really focuses on some of the greater universe, I think is really beneficial. Is why I think Ahsoka is one of my top Star Wars shows, specifically because of the going to a new galaxy, the origin of the Night Sisters, and having the son and the mother and the father and all of these Force things, origins going into these shows. And it's something that Dave Filoni was doing in the Clone Wars, picked it up in Rebels, and then into Star Wars. And so there's a lot of things going on there. That being said, I can see why a lot of the shows kind of fell through. One, because there's just a toxic fan base and they just don't like when women are on screen. And people of color, that's nothing new. But also, I think when you get to shows like The Acolyte, like Ahsoka, it's heavy Star Wars, right? It's kind of like watching, I mentioned this in a previous episode where I talked about Captain America, Brave New World, when that came out last year now, a year ago at this point, and how if you were a casual Marvel watcher, that movie has a lot of deep Marvel lore. If you didn't see Eternals, you didn't understand why there was this giant statue. If you didn't watch The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the show, you're probably confused about Sam and who the new Falcon was. If you haven't seen the biggest one, if you haven't seen The Incredible Hulk, which is a almost 20-year-old movie, you wouldn't have no idea who Samuel Stearns was, the leader. So it's a lot to kind of... It's just we're to the point now where they're doing too much fan service, and the casual audience is suffering from that. I went off on that little tangent because I want to bring this up, that if Dave Filoni did not like Andor, I think it's because and as a creator myself, as a writer myself, when you create your characters, like I said, he created Ahsoka. He's the reason she exists, and all of these different lore things, pulling things in from legends and making them canon again. If people don't receive it well, I think you can get kind of bitter, and it wouldn't surprise me if Dave Filoni is that, or... Because I know people like him. I know people, if their project doesn't do well, they get bitter. And when you see this guy, Tony Gilroy, come in, creates a show, which, by the way, Kathleen Kennedy was a big hand in greenlighting the Andor series, but Tony Gilroy is also on the record saying that he wouldn't have Andor without Baby Grogu. But when you look at Andor as a whole, Tony Gilroy didn't even want to do the show. And it's like when you see a character like when your hands are so deep into Star Wars and you're running the show and you're running the lore, and then you have like this writer come in with a side character, not even the main character, but like a supporting character in a film that you can argue is the best Star Wars film, and then have a 2-season spinoff show on the origin of just that character, but also the rise of the Empire, and it's received as one of the best pieces of Star Wars media ever created. I can see where the bitterness comes from. Like I said, it's not big of a deal. Like it's kind of a rumor. It's kind of, like, oh, it's a he said, she said type of thing. But this does kind of put a fear in me, and it's the same fear I have with DC, where when you have someone like James Gunn and Dave Filoni, people who are responsible for creating these universes, you're less likely to greenlight projects that don't involve your characters. I'm sorry, that's just business, and I don't think that's the case. I don't want it to be the case. I want there to be room for more young and talented creators to come into these studios and to write projects for these characters that they love, and I know. But when you look at the DCU so far, all we have is Superman, Creature Commandos, Peacemaker, and Supergirl, all 4 of which are James Gunn's babies. It is kind of like going that way of like, well, I'm only going to do my characters and my stories and maybe have some crumbs here for someone else to take over. It's just a fear that I have with Star Wars. And if we get to the point where we only have Dave Filoni characters, where they create shows, then that's going to get boring and that's going to get stale, and people will not resonate with it as much. Which is why I'm looking forward to, there were talks of Taika Waititi doing a Star Wars project or like a trilogy. I really wish Rian Johnson had his Star Wars trilogy. I personally want more Star Wars that's not even involved with the Skywalker saga era. I'm kind of sick of it. Like, I like those films. I like the rise of the Empire stuff, but I'm sick of it. I know I'm not the only fan, but who is sick of this time period. But I want to see more High Republic. I want to see more post New Republic, and like, I like Rey. I really want to see, a movie about Rey 20 years in the future, so far removed from the sequel trilogy, and what does the galaxy look like? Even stories that take place hundreds of years after their first order in the New Republic, I would love to see. Look, I'm just really excited for new Star Wars to come out. I am really curious on, what Mandalorian and Grogu is going to do. We only had the one trailer, and that came out months ago at this point. So we might get something for the Super Bowl, because I know we're going to get probably an official trailer for Avengers Doomsday, and we're supposed to be getting a Spider-Man trailer like soon. At the time of recording this, the Spider-Man trailer was supposed to come out already, like last week. So I don't know what like the deal is. I'm sure it'll come out this week as I'm filming this, and then we'll talk about it next week. But back to Star Wars. I wrote a Star Wars film. I would love to actually like direct or write a Star Wars project, like officially. I have written a fan film. I haven't done it yet. It's just been sitting in my portfolio for a while, but I have shared it around and people seem to like it. It's different enough to really stand out among other Star Wars fan films, but that's a conversation for a different day. So let's go ahead and move on to trailers. There's really only a couple trailers I want to talk about. The biggest one is probably Daredevil. At the time of recording this, that trailer came out today, or teaser trailer came out today, for season 2 of Born Again. And yeah, it looks good, and I'm excited for it. It looks like it's keeping with the style that was established in season 1 in terms of like cinematography and just like the way that Matt's powers are portrayed on screen. But I think the biggest thing from this trailer is that Kristen Ritter is back as Jessica Jones, and I think that's huge. And I really liked her show. Her and Daredevil were the only shows that got 3 seasons, and I believe her 3rd season was the last season to come out of the Netflix run of those shows. But this does open the door for Mike Coulter to come back, because I really like him as Luke Cage. Even Finn Jones. I know people really like to shit on on Iron Fist. Season 1 I don't think is that good, but season 2 I think is a step up. I really enjoyed season 2 way more, and I like those characters. I want to see more of the Defenders in the MCU, and again, with Frank Castle getting his own special presentation coming probably this summer, and then he's going to be in Spider-Man Brand New Day. This also opens up the door for Daredevil to have a cameo in Brand New Day, or even vice versa, Spider-Man, Tom Holland, making a cameo in Daredevil. Now, I know that is wishful thinking, but there was a article recently that Sony was open to sharing Spider-Man more with Disney Marvel, with the MCU, and put him in more things. So I don't know, the possibilities on the table. And when it comes to Sony, they failed with their projects. What was the last one? Venom 3, The Last Dance, which I don't really care for the Venom films. I think the first one's fine. I've mentioned it before in another fandom friendly episode. It might have been when I talked about the Venom trailer when that came out last year. Sony has really dropped the ball on Spider-Man, and these movies are only good because Spider-Man is allowed to be in this universe. But we'll talk more about Spider-Man when we actually get a trailer so we can see what we're dealing with. But yeah, Daredevil, I'm excited for him. It's supposed to come out in March again in a couple months. So definitely we'll be covering that when it comes out. Next trailer I want to talk about is Invincible. We got a trailer for Invincible Season 4. And, it just looks like just a continuation of the show. It's a universe that I'm really akin to, because it reminds me a lot of my superhero universe that I've developed over the last several years. And separately, because I didn't even know Invincible existed. I didn't read the comics. So I go into the show blind. Obviously, because of season 3 and how big that was, especially with the Invincible War, there was a lot of things that were kind of spoiled for me in terms of the comics. I knew Thrag was going to be in here. I knew about Conquest when it happened in season 3, and so, but I tried to keep my knowledge of Invincible as little as possible, because I do want to go back and read the comics, because they've been around for I think 20 years at this point. So, but yeah, so Invincible looks good. I don't remember when it's supposed to premiere. I also think it's soon, in March maybe. So we'll definitely talk about that when it comes out as well. Next trailer I want to talk about is, I mentioned it earlier, is Maul, Shadow Lord. This was something that was announced, I believe it was last year at the Star Wars Celebration. Sam Witwer's coming back to voice Maul. He's had his hand in a lot of Star Wars projects. He's basically best friends with Dave Filoni. So, but it is interesting because Maul is not really a character I care about. I think he's cool, but the only reason why I think he's cool, and the reason why I sort of am excited for the show, I guess, is that because of Clone Wars, the series, Dave Filoni brought him back. So, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about would this show get greenlit if it wasn't Dave Filoni's character? So I don't know. There's just things there that I'm sure in the coming months we'll see. But yeah, but I mean, it looks good. It looks great, actually. I mean, from when Disney revitalized Clone Wars and we got season 7, and then from the Bad Batch and the Tales of the Jedi and the Sith and the Underworld, which I think was last year. The animation has really stepped up and it looks so good. I really like that style of animation. And so we'll just have to see I don't even know what the show could be about. I mean, realistically, I'm sure it's based off of a book, but we do know that Darth Maul goes on to lead Crimson Dawn from Solo, and then he eventually helps Ezra and the Rebels, and then goes and I think in Rebels he finally gets killed by Obi-Wan. He finds Obi-Wan on Tatooine. So I mean, a lot of this is going to be like his life post Order 66, because remember in Episode 7 he was the leader of Mandalore technically, and Ahsoka was there during Order 66 or right before, and she dueled him, and he was like, you know, this is coming and you guys got to be ready, and like blah blah blah, and then he escapes and we don't know what happened to him. So I'm assuming the show will pick up from that moment we last saw him. But I don't know, it comes out in April, I believe. So just a few months away, and I will most likely watch it. I mean, it's Star Wars. That's all for trailers. There was a couple of other trailers. There was a new Mario Galaxy trailer. I don't really care for Mario. I'm not really a huge Nintendo fan. So there's also a He-Man trailer, live action He-Man trailer, which has gotten a lot of backlash recently because there's a scene in there where he's like working in office and he has his pronouns on there, and it's funny to me because I'm not a chud and pronouns don't offend me, but it's like he's literally called He-Man, and the fact that he had his pronouns called he him is like a joke. And a lot of these people who are media illiterate just see pronouns and automatically think that He-Man is woke, and I'm like, guys, it's not that serious. But yeah, but other than that, nothing really new noteworthy. As of filming this, Wonder Man is out. I have finished the series. I really like it. It's interesting because it dives so deep into like the industry. Obviously it's kind of like the studio, but just like that takes place in the MCU. It is kind of its own thing, but it is interesting because it does set up a lot of things that could be coming in the MCU. But I haven't fully sat with it yet, so I probably will dive deep into it in next week's episode, really breaking it down and talking about some of my theories and stuff like that. So let's talk about Avengers Doomsday. I have made several videos on Doomsday. I think the last time I talked about Avengers Doomsday was a previous episode last year where they did the cast announcement. So it's been a while, and there's been a lot of theories. I've seen a lot of theories, just a lot of people just trying to piece things together, and it all kind of started about a month ago when during showings of Avatar Fire and Ash, the Russo brothers, they were releasing these like little teasers once a week, and we got 4 of them for now. By the time this video comes out, it's been a couple weeks since the last one like officially came out like on YouTube. But in these trailers we see in the first trailer we get a look at Steve returning, and there was a lot of discourse when this trailer came out, because it's like, why are we going back to Steve Rogers? Why are we going back to, you know, his version of Captain America? And presumably it's in the future. It's in this alternate timeline that he retired with Peggy. And the biggest reveal in that trailer was that he had a child. And this has been like the biggest theory, that Doom is going after these children. And now, for me personally, I don't like that. I think it's a cop-out. I think really the only child he should go after is Franklin Richards, which we did see him in the post-credit scene of Fantastic Four, presumably with Franklin Richards. He is the only child I think that Doom should go after because of Franklin's powers. You know, he's an Omega-level mutant. He is a reality warper. He has the power of cosmic, so he can literally create universes, which is something that is going to come into play in Doomsday, especially when we get to Secret Wars. Now, when that trailer came out, there was only one person, one channel, Heroes Reforged, Augustine, in that he pointed out like that the motorcycle that Steve was riding was from like maybe like the 70s or the 80s and not from the 40s. And so that leads us to believe that either one, Marvel didn't pay attention when they put the motorcycle in, or 2, obviously they did pay attention, and it was intentional. It was a clue to show us that this was in a future. And just recently I saw people talking about that. So good job on Augustine, because he's a motorcycle guy and he called it like a month and a half ago, and no one has talked about it until like recently. The second trailer I think is interesting. It is Thor praying to Odin, which I think is just a nice like little touch. And then he's talking about Love, which is his adoptive daughter. Well, it's his real life daughter, Chris Hemsworth, but his adoptive daughter from Thor: Love and Thunder. Now, she is also another child I could see Doom going after, because she, one, was dead and then came back to life and literally has the power of eternity in her, like one of the four cosmic beings of the universe. So I could see him going after her, but it doesn't look like it because she's in the trailer. She's there. So I don't know. And again, the kid theory, I just think it's a cop out. I really don't like it. And it carries on into the next one too, which we finally get to see the X-Men, which is great. It's Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen back in there. The X-Mansion is being destroyed by Sentinels, and we finally get to see John Marston in a comic accurate Cyclops with the blue and yellow buckles letting out his eye blast. And it's really cool. I think that's probably my favorite trailer, because I mentioned it before, X-Men were kind of like the first comics that I read, as a kid. And I remember seeing X-Men the movie when it came out in theaters. Well, it might have been X2, because I think I was only 4 when X-Men 1 came out, so it was probably X2 I saw in theaters. I know I saw Spider-Man in theaters and Spider-Man 2 in theaters. But those movies are kind of what started me on this journey. It does have a special place in my heart, and I am really, really excited for. And then the final trailer, presumably in a desert. I know they shot it in Bahrain, over in the Middle East, but presumably in a desert. We don't exactly know. It looks like a Talokan temple, because we do see Namor, we see Namora, we see some of the Talokans, and then of course we get M'Baku and Shuri, Black Panther, meeting Ben Grimm from the Fantastic Four. So that leads us to believe that in the Thunderbolts post-credit scene, when we see the Fantastic Four ship arrive, there was a lot of theories on who could have been on that ship. They're like, oh, well, obviously it's the Fantastic Four, or it could have been Doom and Franklin, or it could have been a cop-out, but presumably it is the Fantastic Four. They land in Wakanda or somewhere near Wakanda, and Talokan and the Wakandans respond to them. But it is really cool to see M'Baku talking to the Thing, and he's just cool with this rock man, and it just adds to the world that M'Baku, he's literally fought aliens. He was in Infinity War and in Endgame he's fought fish people. So he's like, yeah, rock guy. Yeah, what else is new? Yeah, so I just really want to talk about theories here, because, again, we don't know what the story is going to be. And I think a lot of people have these really high expectations. Now it's been reported that Tobey Maguire is returning for Doomsday, or not Doomsday, but for Secret Wars, and so is Hugh Jackman, which are probably a given. But it's just we need to relax, okay? We just need to chill out, all right? Once we see a trailer, an actual trailer, we get a little bit of a glimpse of what the story is going to be, how Robert Downey Jr. is going to portray Doom, if we even get a full look at Doom. Honestly, I kind of don't want them to show Doom until the movie comes out, but I never get what I want when it comes to marketing. And it's not my film, so I know they're going to pull all the stops for this film leading up to it. And realistically, we only have to wait a couple more weeks, because I do think we're supposed to get the first full trailer for the Super Bowl, which at the time of recording is about a week and a half. Theoretically, we don't have to wait that long. I just think there are a lot of insane theories out there about, oh, okay, so he's coming for the kids. It's okay, well, no, he's gonna use the Void as Battleworld, which I don't think is that insane. I think that's kind of why they set up the Void the way that they did. Especially, I've also seen a huge uptick in theories why RDJ is playing Doom, in-universe reasons, oh, he's a twin. I think my big thing when they initially announced him was that he was a variant, because they specifically said he was Victor Von Doom, not a variant of Tony Stark. But now people have gone back and forth. They said, oh, either he is a Tony Stark from a universe where he survived the snap, so he's scarred, so he wears a suit of armor permanently, and then he kind of goes crazy with power because he doesn't want to give up the Infinity Stones. There was actually a very interesting theory that I saw randomly, and I don't remember where I saw it or who the creator was, so I'm sorry if you see this. But his theory was that it was the Tony Stark, the version of Tony Stark from the 2012 timeline where they tried to steal the Tesseract, but where they got the Time Stone and the Mind Stone. And the way that he explained it was actually pretty well thought out. And he was talking about how they lost the Tesseract, right? Because Loki took it, and that Loki is the Loki that we got in the Loki series, who is now the God of Stories, and that's how it circles back to that. But then, like that Tony, he realizes that they leave, and that kind of timeline continues on. He's like, what happened? I had this heart attack, and he sees that there was another version of him with a tiny man who snuck into his suit and his arc reactor, caused him to have this heart attack, right? And then he just kind of sees like there were two Caps as well. There were like all of these things going on, and then he discovers that, oh, these are us from a future or a different timeline, and just kind of the snowball effect that really accelerated kind of this revenge plot. Since Loki took the Tesseract, that Tesseract was technically taken out of time. And according to the Ancient One, in that same sequence, if you remove an Infinity Stone, it causes a branched timeline, and without it, it could cause XYZ, right? So his theory was that Doctor Doom is essentially just that version of Tony. He goes and, like, because their universe is dying and it's getting wrecked and all that kind of stuff like that. I thought that was interesting. I don't know if that is plausible because technically the TVA did prune that timeline. So the likelihood of that like actually happening is pretty slim. I don't really have any strong theories on how Doomsday is going to play out. It's just one of those things where I personally don't want to get like my hopes up, because this is what's happened in a lot of these fandoms, especially in the last like 10 years, really, where people have expectations for these films. It happened with Star Wars, and that's why The Last Jedi was really hated on, and The Rise of Skywalker was really hated on, but for different reasons. With The Last Jedi especially, because people had what they thought the movie was going to be, and they went in with those expectations, and it didn't happen the way that they thought it would, and they hated it for it. If you remember back when Doctor Strange 2 was coming out, there were so many theories that Superior Iron Man, played by Tom Cruise, was going to be in that film. I mean, there was no evidence of it, besides that Iron Man or Tom Cruise was tied to the Iron Man movie, in like 2005, 2006, before they even did that film, and the people were like, oh, that means they're going to bring him back and he's going to be a version of Tony Stark from that movie. And it's like, no, guys, relax. Please, it's not that serious, okay? I trust the writers. I trust the Russo brothers. They have technically not let me down yet. And I know we talked about this before, but like the writers of the film only casted Robert Downey Jr. because they knew they had a story, they had a plot line that worked and made sense enough for him to play that character. So yeah, I trust them. I trust the vision. As a writer, as a screenwriter, as a filmmaker myself, I trust their vision that they can bring these characters, these stories, and really kind of close off this multiverse saga that, for the most part, we only really had like 4 movies that really dealt with the multiverse. I think in a future episode, I'm going to be doing a watch list, like what films and TV shows are, probably essential watching. I did see one list where someone's like, nah, you don't have to watch Loki. And I was like, what? He's in the movie. What are you talking about? But on top of that, they're already talking about that Secret Wars is going to be broken up into 2 parts. And honestly, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I mean, Secret Wars is such a big concept to do. Like realistically, they would have to kind of do what Crisis on Infinite Earths did, like the CW when they did that, with the Arrowverse, and how they brought in like, oh, here is Batman 89, here is the original Batman 66, here is Earth 2003, and that was the Birds of Prey TV show, and like here's Ezra Miller, the Flash, meeting Grant Gustin, Flash. And so the only way in that that kind of worked for me, at least, because that's the closest thing we're going to get to a Crisis on Infinite Earths. And Secret Wars is basically the same. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw a montage of the opening of Secret Wars was all of these cameos. We just get them out of the way, and we see Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider universe gets destroyed. We see, Andrew Garfield's TASM universe get destroyed. Tobey Maguire's universe get destroyed. We see, Blade, I guess technically was already, so was Elektra and Daredevil, but we see all of these different Marvel properties, whether they're live action. I mean, they kind of have to be, because but we do know that there are cartoon versions or animated versions in the multiverse, because we saw it in Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, and we also saw it in Across the Spider-Verse, where we see Donald Glover as Prowler, but in live action. So we do know that they can mix. I don't know how that'll look. I think it'll be weird to have like cartoon Miles Morales with live action Tom Holland. Like, I don't know. We just have to see. We have to wait and be patient. And the way that things are going, especially in America right now, I mean, I don't even know if Avengers Doomsday will even come out. I don't even know if we'll be a country by December. Just have to be patient. We just have to wait. As the year goes on, we're gonna get more trailers, and I think around like Brand New Day coming out, or Spider-Man coming out, Comic-Con, D23 is where we're really gonna see the push on what this movie can be. But anyways, guys, that's all I have for now. Let me know what your theories are for Avengers Doomsday. I am really curious to see like what other people's thoughts are on this. Next week we'll be talking about Wonder Man, and I'll probably go ahead and just start working on the watch list for Avengers, because it's a lot of content that you have to get through in order to be sort of caught up on what's going on. I will also be working on some side content as well. That's not directly the podcast, but will be tier list videos, I guess. And then also maybe trailer reactions. We'll see. I haven't decided yet. And so a lot of that stuff will be, like side content, essentially. As always, guys, if you like this type of content, don't forget to like and subscribe. It's going to help out this channel. This is a new channel, technically. But as always, my name is Jorvik, and I'll see you in the next one.